Welcome to the On Your Mind podcast, where we are changing the mental health narrative, bringing hope and solutions. Here's your host, Timothy J. Hayes, psychologist.
My next guests are Tim Ryan and Jennifer Gimenez-Ryan. Tim, famously known as A&E's dope man and substance abuse interventionist, and Jennifer, world-renowned actress, model, substance abuse counselor, and reality TV star, are not your typical celebrity Hollywood couple. Not only are they famous and in active recovery, they are both proactive in changing lives, sometimes even helping to save them. Tim and Jen speak to audiences all over the world whenever possible. They travel and work together during public speaking engagements. They inspire their audiences to live a more fulfilling, passionate, and purposeful life. You can find out more about them at dopetohope.com, dopetohope.com. Jen, Tim, thank you for joining us. It's delightful to see you.
Thank you so much for having us on your show. We're so excited.
Blessed to be here. How are you?
I'm good, and excited to hear what you have to share with us. I'd like to start with an opening question to the nature of, can you tell us a little bit about how you got into the work you're doing and what drives your passion for it?
Go ahead.
You want me to go first?
Yeah.
She does this all the time. This is not something I ever chose to get into. Unfortunately, I grew up in the northern suburbs of Illinois, a little town by the name of Crystal Lake. And, back then, in the 80s and stuff, we'd go up to Wisconsin drinking. The drinking age was 18. No one was getting DUIs. And, I made it through high school, went to college, and unfortunately, addiction took over. And I struggled for the next 30 years. My first time in treatment was 1990. I stayed sober about a year, but I kept bouncing in and out of 12-step based programs. I'd go clean up, suit up, get my life together, go back out, and eventually picked up heroin, struggled with the 12-year heroin habit. And December 16th of 2010, I overdosed while driving, hit two cars, put four people in the hospital, one being a 9-month-old baby. By the grace of God, they were all okay. But I don't remember anything because I was dead on the scene. It took 5 shots of Narcan to bring me back, and that was in 2010. It's much different now with the fentanyl. 21 months, I fought my case, and I was ultimately sentenced to 7 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections at 44 years old. And when I walked in, I was done. I had a huge alcohol addiction, a huge cocaine, a huge opiate addiction. And by the grace of God, I detoxed in a prison cell. It was horrific. I would not recommend it, but that's what I needed. And through the grace of God, I was able to get into Sheridan Correctional Center in Illinois. There's 28 prisons. 2 of them have therapeutic drug treatment programs. And I got into Sheridan and I plugged into recovery. My cellmate and I went through the 12 steps. We read hundreds of books, wrote a couple business plans. All I did was recovery in prison. My wife divorced me, lost her home in foreclosure, displaced my 4 kids and my wife. They moved into her mother-in-law's. And my worst fear in prison was my oldest son was going to die from an overdose because he was in active addiction and we were using prior to me going to prison. He had been to treatment twice. I walked out of prison December 16th of 2013. I ended up only doing 13 and a half months, but for the first time in my life, 13 and a half months sober. I made home base in Naperville, Illinois. I started some family support groups where I had the parents come with the loved one that was struggling because this is a family disease. Let's bring everyone together, set up a nonprofit guiding indirect and indigent people into treatment, paying for them to get into sober living. I stumbled into working for a for-profit treatment center that allowed me the opportunity to do the nonprofit, never take a salary. And then on my 21-month sobriety date, my 20-year-old son passed away from an accidental drug overdose. And I went to a 12-step based meeting, never looked back. That kind of catapulted me into what I do. And since then, I've grown treatment centers, nonprofits. I've wrote a book called From Dope to Hope, A Man in Recovery. It's my life story. I had a documentary on A&E called Dope Man. I've done 2 TED Talks. I've done probably 5,000 speaking events. My wife and I ultimately partnered up to speak and do interventions and maybe open a treatment center. And I flew to Florida to meet Jen for business. And when I met her, it was love at first sight. And we were engaged 4 months later, got married that year, and moved out to California. And now we run dopetohope.com, or From Dope to Hope, which is our corporate name. And we do sober coaching, life coaching, intervention, speaking events. We run a podcast called The Tim and Jen Show. We consult with law enforcement, the DEA, on the mental health and substance abuse pandemic, and are just trying to be part of the solution today. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it, Tim.
Well, I need a breath after that.
I know.
And, and part of me needs to just take a moment and feel the weight of losing your son. So just take a breath.
No, it's all good.
And I'll just say, I was taking a moment to pause, because the emotions were hitting me when you were talking about the car accident and then racing through and then getting to the part about losing your son. So I have gratitude for people like you who are out there trying to make their lives better. And then by extension, you're one of those people that my father would call a multiplier, because you're going out and not just making your life better, but you're actively working to help other people's lives. So thank you for that.
I love it. Tim, thank you. I like that. A multiplier. Kudos to your father. That's I've never heard that before used the way you used it in that context, and it really makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
So is it appropriate to ask Jen, what's your side? How did you get hooked up with
I'm like, when Tim was talking, I was like, well, I really don't have that much to say. No, I have a lot to say. The question was, how did I get started in this, right? How did I become what I'm doing now in life? I got sober this time around. I'm a returnee. I couldn't stay sober. And I know a lot of people suffer from that. My sponsor actually got sober once. She's over 32, 34 years sober. And that was her journey. My journey was different. And I finally had my best friend, Brady Glanville from the Housewives, and my mom throw me into treatment. They came to my house and they said they couldn't watch me die like this, and that I needed to give myself a shot. At the time, I had a disconnected job, blood dripping down everywhere, all over my house from all the drugs I was doing, cocaine I snorted and stuff. And I remember I made a deal with God, and I said, give me this. I don't remember exactly what it was. And I said, I'll give you me. Ironically, 2.5 weeks later, he gave me what I asked, and I said I'd go to treatment. I was going for 5 days under my terms. I love when addicts and alcoholics say, I'm going to go under my terms. So I was going for 5 days. I ended up staying 9.5 months. And where I went was in Pasadena. I relapsed in treatment in November. I went July 12th of 2005. In November 2nd or 3rd, I relapsed. It was too real. It was too raw. It was too much, for me. Things were happening to me, and people would say, how do you feel? And I just kept saying, I don't know. How do you want me to feel? I wanted you to tell me how to feel, and I would feel that. That's how I was trained in life, right? I suffer from a lot of isms. One of them, and my first one, was people pleasing. So if you told me how to act, I do it, and this time around, they said, no, we're going to define what's going on. And I ended up going to treatment. My counselor in treatment was Bob Forrest. He was on Celebrity Rehab and Sober House and all those shows, and he's a big advocate for recovery, and he gets us. He's an incredible human being. And my other doctor, I had a doctor there by the name of Dr. Drew Pinsky, who used to be on Celebrity Rehab, Sober House, and all that. And they had called my mom 3 different times during my detox the first time around, saying that I may die from the alcohol withdrawal, and that I was one of those hopeless cases, and to get ready to say goodbye. And Dr. Drew and the team said, let's just go through the motions with her. She's one of those that need to die for the rest of them to get it. Ironically, I didn't die. And I made it out of treatment. I stayed from January 15th of 2006 is my sobriety date. When I checked back into rehab after leaving for those 2 months, 10 weeks. Those 10 weeks felt like one long night, and that's all I remember. It was just like, all I could think about was everyone in treatment and who was hooking up with who, and Dr. Drew's little smirk he does, and Bob Forrest's red hair. If anyone watch those shows, they know that's what they do. They have red hair and stuff. And I went, wow, this is a really horrible place for a girl like me to be when all I wanted to do was numb myself. And all I'm thinking about is you guys, it's really bad. So I finally went to my mom's house and I said, take me to treatment. And the first time I went to treatment, I went with 4 chewy bags. I changed in between every group. I thought it was a fashion show. That day when I asked my mom to take me back to treatment, I went with the clothes on my back and that was it. I wanted nothing. I just knew I couldn't live or die. And they told me, they tested me when I got there, and I was buying cocaine, I thought, over an 8-ball a day. And my dealer laced me with horse tranquilizer, rat poison, speed, tranquilizer. Just name it was in there. I was a full-fledged heroin addict. It was bad. And my main doctor told me that I needed to go into the psych ward to detox off of the narcotics off with narcotics of the opiates. And they needed to put me in treatment psych ward there. And I just went, whatever. And I remember that day vividly, going up in the elevator and the door slamming, and my mom is crying behind me. A tech is holding me up.
You're in the psych.
I'm in the psych ward, and we're going up the elevator. And all of a sudden, these 2 big doors open and they slam shut. And that echo still lives with me. And it was like from all the locks in the psych ward. And I remember there's a line that friends and family couldn't cross. My mom's crying behind me. And I see this person running down the hallway naked, and this other girl was like fighting herself. And I see this guy in a wheelchair and his eyes were rolling back as I'm walking to my room, was the last room on the left. And I remember his eyes were when he was just drooling. And I went, how did me of all people could get here? How did I get here? All I wanted was that relief when I was 12 years old. I wanted to feel like they did. My family's from Argentina. I used to say drinking equated to happiness because that's how it was in my family, in Argentina. But it wasn't like that here in the States for me. And the tech went to go get my assessment papers, and I went to the restroom, and I realized in psych wards to take away shoelaces, plastic, and a sharp object away from you. Well, the idiots forgot the belt. And just like that, I got up. There's no doors connecting into the bedroom to the bathroom. And I saw objects on the ceiling, and I went and I put my belt through there and I secured it. And then I put my head through there and I hung myself that day. The last thing I remember on January 15th, where my feet were dangling and everything went dark. When I came to, I was so upset, Tim. I couldn't live and I couldn't die correctly. And I was stuck in this hell of a vessel called me. Because of the fixation, I had a lot of complications. I couldn't speak. It took me 3 months to form sentences. Sometimes I still get confused with words here and there. I shook profusely. That took 9 months, my hands, my feet to dwindle down. I had no control of my bodily functions. I was independent. I like to call them diapers. I was in a wheelchair. I would lay on my bed and my brain worked perfectly. That was the scariest part. My brain worked perfectly, but I couldn't connect anything. So I remember leaning on the bed and going, okay, Jen, put your right foot down, then your left. And I did, and I collapsed. I couldn't walk because of the fixation. I learned to walk. I was in a wheelchair, cane, walker, then a cane, then freely learned to walk again. And that took about 6 months to get that going. And I just remember sitting in that psych ward. They had me on a 2-week hold, and I could hear there was meetings. It was on the 2nd floor at this place where I went to, Las Encinas. I'm not endorsing it, but I went, and I remember going to the window, and they had frost windows with bars, and you could crack it like a 1/4 of an inch. And it took me a while to try to open it because I could hear people, and people were laughing, and someone was telling a joke, and someone far away was yelling at someone. And they were all smoking and doing this. There was open meetings going on there. And all of a sudden I said in my head to God, I said, God, is it humanly possible for a girl like me to ever feel whatever it is they're feeling out there? And if so, I'll go to any lengths. And for me, that's my day of surrender. I didn't know what that entailed when I said that. I left April 30th, and it was time. I needed to get my life going. I needed to go back to LA and all this stuff. And when I got to LA, I had no game left in me. None. All I did was contemplate suicide and using every day, because treatment helped me. I'm so grateful for treatment. I needed that watch. I needed people to tell me when to get up, when to eat, what to do, take these pills, act like this, feel this is what that's feeling. For me, I needed that watch. The real work started when I walked out of treatment. And I didn't know that. I didn't know how much I was going to have to dig deep. At 9 months sober, my sponsor, I was talking about dying again. And she said, I can't do it your way, but if you're willing to do it the program way, I'll go to any lengths to help you. And I said, what does that look like? And it was a plethora of things I had to do. And we can get into that later. But what had happened was I took over because I had to take commitments. I took over Los Encinas, where I went, their big meeting, and I became secretary there. And then I started bringing all my friends because I've been trying to get sober since I'm 21. I'm 45 now. I've got over 16 years. I was in my late 20s getting sober.
What was your career? You never mentioned that.
So because I got discovered modeling when I was 13 years old at the Santa Monica Pier by a man named Bruce Weber. He's one of, till this day, biggest photographers in the world. I was his girl for about 5 months. I went from growing up in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where there's dirt roads and donkeys all over, to becoming a supermodel overnight. I've been on every magazine cover all over the world. I've done every catwalk all over the world. I've done campaigns all over the world, billboards in New York Times Square, music videos with Tupac, Babyface, Lionel Richie, Mick Jagger, Prince, and the list goes on. And one of the things I did with Bruce Weber when I was his girl was this movie called Let's Get Lost. It was a documentary on Chet Baker. Well, I didn't know until quite some years later that it was nominated for Best Documentary at the Oscars. So my first movie, it's an Oscar-nominated movie. And it won the Cannes Film Festival, Venice, Sundance, name it, it won everything. So here I am at the top of my game, speaking full, I did a movie called Blow. That was my biggest movie.
Charlie's Angels.
It's not yet. Yeah, wait, you're screwing me up, babe. Let me.
You normally tell that at the beginning.
I know, but
story, and I didn't want her to forget.
From acting, here I am. My first movie is Blow, as an actress, in my own, after studying. It's my second movie. Then I do another movie, Vanilla Sky, with Tom Cruise, and Charlie's Angels, and Sweetest Thing, and Corky Romano. And I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And I am everywhere. I'm the new it girl. I'm back in Vogue, Maxim's Hot 100, Esquire, Women of the World, most beautiful women in the world. I'm doing everything. Oscars, red carpets. And I'll tell you this, at 21 years old, I got sober. I was sober in the beginning to Blow, not in the end. I couldn't stay sober to save my life. I had no foundation. And people are like, oh my God, how did you do that? Like, you were at the top of your game. I had no foundation. I've done no deep work on myself. Well, cut to in treatment, I took over the meeting. I brought all my high-profile clients, my high-profile friends for fun and for free to come speak there. That place changed overnight, and it became a huge sensation. So Dr. Drew started giving me his high-profile clients for fun and for free to sponsor, and they were doing this show called Celebrity Rehab. After Celebrity Rehab, now, mind you, I'd called Hollywood a chapter. I had moved out of LA. I said it was Egypt. It was only an hour and a half away. But I called Hollywood a chapter, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I applied. My sponsor told me it was time for me to take action at 2.5 years sober. And I applied at Target and Starbucks, and I didn't get those 2 jobs. But what happened was faith without works is dead. And my sponsor said, why don't you write down who you want to be and what you want to do? I wrote down 85 things because, see, I was still trying to prove you guys wrong. Like, I was going to prove you that this doesn't work. Out of those 85 things, 49 of them have come true. I still have those 2 sheets. I look at them every January 15th to see what's come true now. And it was things like I wanted to make a difference. I wanted to be a businesswoman. I wanted to be back on TV. I wanted to do this. And it all came true. So I always tell people, be careful what you ask for because it will come. You may have to do some work, but it will come. And Drew came to me and said, we're doing a spinoff show called Sober House. Can you run the house? Now, my sponsor, when she said, then you're going to have to go to any lengths to get sober, I ended up going to the rooms where she got sober, Crenshaw and 96. It was in the hood in Compton. And that became my home base. And those people rebirthed me, and they gave me so much love. I'm eternally grateful for that. But what had happened was I did this show, Sober House, and then I did another season of Sober House, and everybody was relating. We had no idea what the show was going to do to people, right? And that what I had found out by those shows coming out on a worldly scale, because it's been all over the world, is that there's not one person out there that's not affected by an alcoholic or an addict or someone that suffers from mental disorders, or it be them. So we're all suffering in this together. And I ended up doing celebrity rehab, and I ended up going on CNN. I started talking about my trials and tribulations, like I'm mental health. I talked about my eating disorders. I talked about, being anorexic and obese. I talked about, what happened in Hollywood. Hollywood didn't do to me. I allowed it to happen. I take full responsibility of my life. Yes, I was underage for many of it stuff, but it's really important that I think that addicts and alcoholics, we speak victiming so much that I got tired of speaking that. I wanted to take action, and I wanted to be in control with my life. And I think by doing that and speaking publicly about my trials and tribulations, it kind of started and created this whole new thing that happened. And there's so many of us out there now doing this.
Wow.
Which is a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. It's incredible. Incredible when we're supporting each other. And let me be very clear on that, though, Tim, because I got to tell you, I'm in Hollywood. I still do movies. I still act. I still do modeling. And I have never been in an industry where it has been the least supportive industry as in recovery industry. And I'm sorry to say that. I'm not trying to be negative. There are phenomenal people out there like you and my husband, and and I'm grateful for the more positive than the negative. But it's really sad that we're just all trying to help people. That's all we're trying to do.
So clear that up for me. What was the last point you were making? You've never been in an industry where there was less support for...
I think the treatment industry. I feel like we should be more supportive, instead of people going, I'm going to take that person or that person. Like, I don't work at, and putting, I speak, what I mean? I do these things, but I see these people and I see how this industry is becoming, like, people are going to be very scared of this industry. You know what I mean? Because...
I came out of the technology industry and I thought that was chaotic, but this healthcare industry, and I didn't ever want to do this, but when I got into it and I brought the first true treatment center where we had housing and PHP and IOP into Naperville, I had some solid clinicians I worked with. And then, I had this nonprofit that I had started, but I stumbled into working in treatment. So I thought I'd raise all this money and save the world, but it gave us the opportunity. We, over 7 years, gave away $1.5 million that was all predominantly raised by myself, Facebook birthdays, but getting donations, my speaking events. And we just paid for people to get into peer-driven programs or sober living. But then when people started turning on me and calling me a body broker and you're a human trafficker and you're in it for the money, they expect you to do everything for free. I ran 7 support. Now, I lived in Naperville. I ran a support group Monday night in Dixon, Illinois, Tuesday night in Streator, Illinois, Wednesday night in Princeton, Illinois, Thursday night we had Crystal Lake in Naperville, and Friday I did DeKalb. Plus, I ran my nonprofit. Plus, I started doing speaking events and wrote a book and had this. I had 3 cell phones. All I did was help people. But then to have people turn on you and say these, well, you don't have credentials. You have no business helping people. I was trained by people that help write the DSM-5, but it's just, there's some great people in this industry, but then there's also people that just want the money. The treatment centers that are making millions and hundreds of millions, but they won't help any of the indigent people. I'm baffled by it, but I could talk about it forever. I don't want to.
One of the things, though, Tim, I got to say, one of the things, Tim, that I want to say is that it's crazy where we're at in this day and age right now. And I have to say this. Tim and I have been speaking on the local news and doing all these things out here in California. And, to see these kids at school with fentanyl. Like I never want to be too jaded to lose sight of what's really going on in life, right? We didn't have these conversations when I was a kid. Life has advanced extremely fast. And after the pandemic, it's even gotten faster and accelerated. We are in a crisis. Like I said this when the pandemic started, that we are in a pandemic within a pandemic. With mental health is going to be on the rise. I said with alcoholism. I said this to my husband day 4 of our lockdown or 3 of our lockdown. He looked at me like I was kind of crazy, but I said this is really gonna really be a crucial time after we get out through this.
So what is it that the two of you have found works best for people? We understand that, and if you treat things in a strict medical model, and if you're just churning people through a system, that doesn't work. What have you found that does work?
Well, that's a great question, Tim. The good thing about Jen and I is she's traveled the country for 10 years, speaking all over. We've probably stepped foot in 3,000 different types of treatment programs, from RCOs to peer-driven and nonprofit to for-profit to Medicare, Medicaid. It's not one size fits all. I can't take a 45-year-old supermodel actress and put her in with a bunch of 22-year-old fentanyl addicts. It's not going to work. So it's understanding, I hate to do this, but when somebody calls for help, I have to ask them, do you have any insurance? Do you have state insurance, no insurance, HMO, PPO, or are you in the position of cash pay? Well, what's that matter? Well, it matters on where I'm going to be able to guide and direct you to get the help you need. Because here in California, or anywhere, there's high-end programs that I've seen as high as $250,000 a month, on average 75 to 100. The average treatment program is about $30,000 a month. So that's just one part. Treatment is just the beginning. And Jenny will say a lot of people don't need treatment. They need a good therapist. They need a good sponsor and an accountability circle and people to guide and direct them.
I mean, I've implemented many, many things now throughout my years. And all I say is I have a lot of yesterdays put together. And like today is a new experience. I've been going through trials and tribulations. And I'm like, how the fuck? And I get through it, right? And I ask for help, and I have a group of people today, and I have all that secured in my circle on what I need to do. But I feel that a lot of people don't necessarily need to go to being treated. Not everyone. I mean, there's that we've talked to do. Some don't and need, to deal with their problems.
So Jen, when you say that, when you say be in treatment, are you talking about an inpatient X number of days a week's treatment?
Yes.
Like a residential facility?
Residential. Okay. Well, that's what's so different too. You could go to Illinois, you've got big inpatient residential programs. You go to California, it might be a 6-bed house up on overlooking the ocean. What I look for is clinical care. What type of clinical director do you have? Do you have an addictionologist? What type of psychiatry do you have? So people can get the best help for themselves, but it's changing so rapidly. Things are changing so quickly. I mean, last week at Hollywood High School, we had 7 kids overdose. One of them's dead, 15 years old, all from fentanyl. Another school, 2 more kids died. Another one, 3 more. This is everywhere. And so we're on top of the LA school systems and the superintendent trying to meet them. And their answer is, well, we're going to put Narcan in the schools. That's great. Narcan should be everywhere. Who's going to educate the kids on what fentanyl is? And if they're at a party smoking a little weed because they're 15, 16, experimenting, have a few drinks, and somebody comes up and says, try this pill, snort this line, they do it, it's fentanyl, they're dead. They would have never tried it in the first place if they weren't smoking weed or drinking. And why are they trying to do it? But it's so difficult to get into the school systems to educate our youth, and they want to do it during Red Ribbon Week or Powerpuff Week and come in for an hour a year and speak. That's it. We need curriculum in schools. All schools should have a substance abuse counselor, a mental health counselor. Half the schools we walk into, Tim, don't even have a school nurse. They have no counselors. They have no guidance counselors. They don't have the budget. So how are we supposed to educate our youth where it all starts if we can't even get in to talk to them?
Yeah, I want to make clear, since I go and let him talk. I want to make clear, though, the question you asked me. Now, if a kid that's 18 years old, 19 years old, get caught once smoking weed, he doesn't need to go to treatment. No. You know what I mean? Like, I think that, like, people are like, oh, no, my kid needs to go. Your kid needs therapy. You need to talk to your kid. You need to have a open communicative relationship with your kid, and if you can't do it, give them somebody you can. Like, that's our job, is to parent younger kids and make sure that they're well, then they're good, your own kids, and I have so much passion.
It's so complex. It's
so much passion with what's going on, right now. And it is a pandemic that's going on.
So what is the program you run? What's the website that you run?
Well, ours is dope, DOPETOHOPE.com, dopetohope.com. And what Jennifer and I do, we dissolved the Man in Recovery Foundation about a year ago. We ran it for 7+ years coming out to California. Jenny and I are shifting and doing other things. So we speak nationwide to junior highs, high schools, colleges, corporations. We talk about addiction and mental health in the workplace, how to spot it, how to look for it. We train law enforcement. So we speak all over. We run a podcast called The Tim and Jen Show on Spotify and all the platforms. We do interventions and we do life coaching, and Jenny still acts and models. Yeah, we do a little bit of and we guide and direct. I mean, I still probably field, Tim, 10, 15 phone calls a day for people asking for help. So a lot of them are still from the Midwest because that's where my home base was, and it's flipping them into Haymarket or Lutheran Social Services or whatever, because the majority of these people don't have resources. They have no insurance, and these are the only places that will take them. So in a nutshell, that's what we do, right?
You were going to add something to that, Jen?
No.
Okay. So the question that comes up for me is, what was happening with a man in recovery that you felt had run its cycle? And what is this shift? What's the difference? What was happening with man in recovery and what is now happening with Dope to Hope?
I did everything with man in recovery. It's not easy running a nonprofit when your board of directors aren't leveraging any money. For the first 3 years, we funded the nonprofit from all my speaking events I got paid for. I had every dollar going to the foundation. And it got to a point to where my accountant lawyer pulled me aside and said, look, Tim, you work 100+ hours a week. You can't save everyone, and you can't keep giving away all your money. I mean, you need to make a living too. And granted, I had a salary from that, but times change. I can't run. I was burned out. Tim, I've been to 150 funerals in 3.5 years. And the first one was my own son. I carry his ashes in there. And when I'm getting phone calls at 6 a.m. on Easter with a family that has no resources, that I've probably put their kid into treatment, paid for him to get into 3 different programs, call me saying, you need to be at my house now. My kid OD'd again. No, I don't. I don't need to be at your house right now. I've helped you. You don't take the suggestions, and my daughter's going to get up and go get Easter eggs. And that's what I'm going to do. What this lady right here taught me is self-care and how to say no. So the most important aspect of my life right now is my self-care. I am 31 days away from 10 years clean and sober. I have a life beyond my wildest dreams. And we just want to get out and help people. But it's teaching people that.
So the big shift from a man in recovery, which was very successful by a lot of different standards and helped a lot of people, and so the big shift from that to Dope to Hope is what in terms of what. Well,
Man in Recovery was a 501c non-for-profit, and we're a for-profit business.
Okay,
but it just. I ran it for 7 years, and it took about 80% of my time. I never took a salary. I put of my own money about $700,000 into it. And it got to a point where I said, I met Jenny. When I met Jen, I
shake my eyes and roll for this one reason.
So I don't highlight on it. I got out of prison. I got in another relationship. I had a beautiful daughter, but the relationship was awful. And all I did was work. And I'm doing all these speaking events, and I was doing 30, 40 a month, 2, 3 a day. But what was happening, Tim, I was having women like Jen or a high school girl or a college or a lady at work come up and want to spew all their trauma. And I'm like, hold on, I'm not a therapist. I don't have a clinical background. I'm just a guy in recovery who knows a little bit about a little bit, but I can guide and direct you. But it started making me feel uncomfortable. So I wanted to partner with a female. And Jen and I had been following each other. And I messaged her one day and said, hey, would you consider wanting to speak with me and do this? And she said, yeah, I'm going to Florida. And I said, I'll be there this weekend. And we're supposed to get breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And I got busy and I never called her. And then I got that message. Hey, jerk, thanks for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. So we talked for about 5-6 weeks. And Jenny got to the point and said, look, Tim, I think you're a nice guy.
Because you're talking about you wanted to check your schedule to see when we could meet. And I said, you and your schedule. I'm so over everyone in their
schedule. So I just booked.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah, it was Tuesday. I said, all right, I'll see you Friday. I booked a flight to Florida. I flew down to meet her. And I'm strictly going in on work. that was it. And when she picked me up and gave me a hug, it was love at first sight. And we're engaged 4 months later and married that year, December 31st of 2019 at the Justice of the Peace here in Beverly Hills. And I packed up and moved to California. I left my work in Illinois had run its course, and I wanted to come out here.
Yeah, you were in Florida a lot too.
In Florida, but I wanted to come out here.
But I also think that what happened with what I came into with Man in Recovery was he was the only one doing all the work.
Yeah, it was.
And there were people on the boards, and he's, and newly engaged. He has 4 kids, a career. He, 5 kids. Well, I'm not, yeah.
But anyhow.
And he has 4 kids and was responsible for at the time, and a family and a new wife. And
I mean, literally, Tim, a family would call me.
But it was nonstop, and it was just him. Can I finish?
Yeah, but I don't think people understand what happened.
Well, that's
I would get the phone call. I'm sending them here. I'm buying the bus tickets. It was insane. I mean, she saw it.
And I think that took its toll. Plus, also, let's not forget, he's helping all these indigent people all day long. We were traveling the country, driving everywhere, and he's on the phone helping these people, and he's worn out. He loves addicts and alcoholics. He is an addict alcoholic. He works with addicts and alcoholics. It becomes too much. And I also think that with no support, and I was like, we need to kind of clear this out a little bit for you so you have some sanity, because if not, you're going to blow your brains out. And that's what I saw. He was on his way just spiraling down, and no one was there to support him.
And boom, you hit it. You get in this industry, you get a name, you start helping people, and everybody thinks you should always be there. You should be at everything. They take your kindness for weakness, but nobody ever, not once, called me and said, Tim, how are you doing? I see you're doing a lot. What can we do for you? Never. Nobody ever. Even when my son died, the next day I'm back helping people.
And you're at the time home life.
Yeah.
It was very hectic.
It just got to be too much. And a year later, I don't regret, because there's plenty of nonprofits we can partner with. But it ran its course, and I'm on a different trajectory now. And that's all there is to it.
So congratulations for the self-care. I mean, it's really needed. I just listened this morning to a podcast, the last podcast of We Are the Luckiest.
Mm.
And the last podcast was about, why is this the last podcast? And it's all the things you just mentioned, right? There are all of these practical aspects behind anything we do, even if we love helping people, even if we love the good results, even if it might bring some notoriety and some money. If that isn't balanced out with what it's giving us, nurturing us, filling us up, if our cup gets empty, we can't help anybody else. So congratulations for taking that step, and for you, Jen, for helping him recognize he needs to do that. My hunch is he's, it's a graduate level program, and he's in 3rd grade. So
the one thing I changed up, Tim, was about a year ago. But what had happened, I moved out here. Jen and I are starting our lives. We had 85 speaking events booked. We're ready, and COVID hit and shut everything down. And she lost 2 movies, a TV pilot. And then we got COVID, and we were one of the first people to have it. We had it for 10 weeks. I will kick a $500 a day heroin habit and a gallon of vodka in a prison cell any day of the week over having what we had. And then we had long haul COVID and all these other issues. And I was depressed. I was this. So I got a new sponsor. My sponsor, like Jen's, is 33 years sober. In 33 years, he's never missed a meeting. And when I sat down with my sponsor, he said, when's the last time you went through the steps? I said, it's been a while. He said, we're going to go through the steps again. He said, you'll be at my house Thursday night. You'll be at this in-person meeting Saturday. You're going to have at least 2 or 3 commitments. You're going to do a gratitude list every day. You're going to call at least 15 to 20 other men that are on that gratitude list. And if I don't hear from you 2 days in a row, I wish you the best of luck. I'm no longer working with you. So I got into the center of the herd here, and I've never looked back. And my recovery community is stronger than I've ever had. Jenny used to say, Tim, wait till you come to LA. The recovery is different. And it is. I've never seen anything like it out here. So that's what I do for self-care and keeping me grounded.
And it's different out there. How?
Tenfold. I've never seen anything like it. I do an online Zoom meeting that we still do because we have people from LA, New York, international, but it's a hardcore group. And I mean, if you're not sharing your gratitude, I've never had a sponsor tell me to do a gratitude list. And if you don't have a minimum 2 commitments, if you're not calling it, I mean, you're accountable.
I can't explain to you what really goes on in the meetings in Los Angeles unless you come here and you experience it. It is one of the most magical experiences you will ever have in your life, normies or addicts and alcoholics. It is life-changing when you go to the right meetings. You get blown away.
Yeah. I mean,
and my structure comes from, it's all big book. It's all big book. Everything's in the big book, or.
Well, what else is different? In Illinois or wherever I lived, I never went to men's stag meetings. That's all we do here. I can only go to men's meetings. I only go to co-ed meetings if I'm with my wife or if I'm asked to speak. I have no business being in a co-ed meeting as a married man. So I stick with the winners. Most of the meetings out here, you can't speak unless you're 10 years clean and sober. You can't get on the podium and speak. When I do Saturday morning Bread and Roses, there's 250 men in person. Somebody gets a year sober, that standing ovation, I've never seen it anywhere. It's different out here. People are hardcore about it, and I love it. I needed it.
So structure, commitment, accountability. You mentioned the big book. Some people may not know what that is, but there's a lot of, if you read it, if you study it, there's all kinds of gems that come from the big book. So it sounds like what you're describing is that the people that you meet in the meetings out there are more committed to their own personal growth and sharing than what you were getting in the meetings back here.
Absolutely.
I feel like, let me just be really clear, because I don't want to be just a girl that's just about like the 12 steps. The 12 steps saved my life. I continuously do the 12 steps. I also implemented many other things. So if people can't relate to a 12-step program, find something that you can relate to. Don't do this on your own because there's other outside help. And I really stress that to people. I don't want to be the person that says it's just this way or it's either doing it the 12-step program way or nothing, because you can go get help other ways. Therapy saved my life. I still go to therapy. I love it. I love it. We do therapy on occasion. We used to do therapy because I never been married before. He's been married a few times and they're not been successful. So I wanted to have a successful marriage, right? That's what I've chosen to do. So I thought it was important that we do this together.
Well, then you got me seeing a therapist and about 3 years.
Yeah.
But Jenny goes, have you ever seen a therapist? I said, yeah, when my kid died, now that I don't need it. She said, just talk to this guy. And I did. And it'd be like talking to you, Tim. And I think I'm going to control this. And this son of a gun takes me in a different direction. And I need that. And I need my therapist guidance and my recovery and my
spirit. A female. Like I remember the day before we did therapy, we're laying in bed about to go, we say goodnight. And he's like, it's dark. And he's like, babe. I'm like, yeah, babe. He's like, are you going to throw me on the bus tomorrow or something? I said, no, I would never do that. That's not my job. The reason why I asked for us to do therapy is that we can, enhance ourselves, support each other more and lift each other up more, and it's so important that we do that, especially if you're in recovery and you're in a relationship, you got to work twice as hard. Because hi, I'm one of them. Hi, he's one of them. We need to meet halfway, and I got to give him his space like he gives me mine.
Wonderful. Well, that Tim was asking kind of, Jen, I think you missed it. He's saying like, what else? So there's therapy as an alternative to the AA, the big book, the 12 steps. Are there other, like rational recovery or other things that you've come across where you've seen people have success that you say, look, if this doesn't work for you, go there? Well,
yes. When I talk about my personal recovery, and I'll use that as an example, I needed to deal with my codependency. I needed to really deal with that. I needed to deal with knowing that there were other things that could help me, like reading books that were not just about recovery, but, Abraham Hicks changed my life. I went through a really bad breakup years ago, and I cried and cried. And then I stopped crying one day, and I was listening to music, and it was like Cardi B, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to beat you up, whatever it is that Cardi says. And then underneath it's like, how to deal with a breakup. Abraham Hicks, all about vibration and cleansing and cleaning, and I do those things. Energy work, meditation,
transcendental meditation.
Amazing. For me, though, almost 10 years ago, I got asked to go do a photo shoot in Delray, Florida. And I went. At the time, I had a rehab show out, and I was on Housewives of Beverly Hills for 4 seasons, but it was out. Had just done CNN the night before. I get to Delray that morning, and everyone's like, it's a capital of recovery. I'm like, no, I would know. I'm the recovery girl, right? So quickly did I find out it was the recovery capital. And what had happened was I launched a magazine. I was going back and forth. I still go back and forth. And I found peace, and I found God, and I found my God going on dates with me at the ocean. And I started spending a lot of time with myself. And those quality moments, like an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3,
Talk
4,
about dating yourself.
Going to the beach. And my sponsor, I had just ended the relationship. And I said, the relationship ended, and it's probably like 2-3 months later. And I said, I think I'm ready to date. And my sponsor's like, really? What do you want him to do? I'm like, I want to take him to a nice restaurant. I want to put pretty clothes on, and I want to buy me flowers. She goes, great. That's what you're going to do with God. Have fun. Tell me when you're done with your first date. I was like, what? So I took myself out, and I went to eat, and then I went to the beach, and and all of a sudden I'm moving and grooving, right? And I'm moving and grooving differently because I'm implementing all these other aspects into my recovery, as well as my recovery, as the recovery.
That's a great concept, and it sounds like you executed it beautifully, because there are some people who would try that and then run. Because sometimes when I'm alone with myself for the first time in years, I discover stuff I didn't want to see.
I cried. I was uncomfortable. But let me tell you, at the end, Tim, I was levitating. I was like Jesus walking on water. You could not touch me, the fire around me, and it just took a little bit of time. And that's how I see my sobriety. When I go through trials and tribulations, I just know to go back to the basics. And the basics always get me. One step forward, the next step forward. I'll call people. I even say to Tim, babe, what foot forward, right or left right now? I need help. He's like, right. And then he goes away. You know what I mean? Like, I just need that.
Excellent. Well, I think that most of us who've done any serious kind of work on ourselves realize that if you lose sight of the basics, that's the first sign that you're in deep water without, and you're not going to be able to tread there very long. You need to get back to the basics.
Well, and let me admit, and I'll let you go, but I have lost the basics in my recovery at times. And that's why I'm saying that, because I've not lost it now. And it's me losing it and admitting it to this in the world that I at times go, oh my God, I totally forgot my basics. Let's start again. Because guess what? I get to start again at any time I want.
Which
is great.
What people don't understand, whether you struggle with mental health or substance misuse disorder, addiction, alcoholism, call it what you want. You have to quit selling yourself short. I'm the guy that in 1990 was introduced to really going to meetings, but I'm the guy that had put up my hand, asked for a sponsor. Nobody would pick on me and be like, yes, I got to wave it again because I thought I could get sober through osmosis. So many people want to knock the 12 steps or celebrate recovery, but they truly don't want to do the work. They don't want to actually get a sponsor with long-term recovery, be accountable, do all these things to have a better result. Everybody wants a quick fix. Well, I want to get on Suboxone. I want to get on methadone. I'll be fine. I can work it. They don't take the time to really work on themselves, mind, body, spirit, everything. As Jenny was saying, her nutrition, her dieting, her working out, the amount of shit she has me take, these nutritional vitamins and pills and drinks, and they're all
shakes and
they're all holistic. And when she met me, I drank 12 cups of coffee a day.
He didn't drink water.
I drank 4 bottles of water today. I've dropped 50 pounds. I'm in the best shape I've ever been in because I started taking someone else's suggestion that had my better interests at heart. And I wish more people would actually support each other and truly work together, where we could do so much more, but then you get egos and pride and pocketbooks. So We just need to stay in our lane and do what we do and be the best at what we're doing on a daily basis. And that's all I can do. I can't save the world. I can't save anyone. I'll never save anyone. I don't like people, though, we're out saving lives. No, we're not. All I do is guide and direct and give you some tools, or I give you a rope. You can climb to the top or you can hang yourself. The choice is yours. I'm giving you an opportunity. So, but I quit chasing people. I used to chase people. I don't anymore.
I'm sure that feels better.
Ooh.
It does.
Well,
for me.
My phones are turned off at 10 o'clock, 11:30 at night, or 11, it goes to do not disturb. I never did that. I'd answer it at 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and I sleep really well. I have my morning routine, and I get on with my day.
Yeah, I was blessed in my second job out of college that my boss pulled me aside and said, listen, you have it all wrong. You think, I was working at a secure facility, juvenile hall at the time. He said, you think it's your job to save these kids. And he saw me start to get really upset when they would come back a year later. And I was pretty sure I'd fixed them a year before. It's not your job to fix or save anybody. It's your job to come here. It was a 24-hour facility. So I was part of a 2-person team that was working a shift, and there were 3 shifts around the clock. He said, you show up, and you're going to be one of the most loving, consistent, firm adults this child has ever interacted with. And that's your gift to them. They can use it. They can use it now. They can use it 10 years from now, but it's not your job to fix them. And if I hadn't had that in my second job out of college, I wouldn't have finished 48 years doing therapy this year, right?
Wow. Congratulations.
I would have burned out a long time ago if I thought it was my job to fix people.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I had that complex though, when I first got sober. I think even throughout my lifetime, because there was a lot of chaos that happened in my childhood. And I felt like if I fixed it, then maybe they want to stay around. It had nothing to do with me, right? If I did this and I was just a kid, right? And then I realized, to answer your original question a little bit more, is I didn't know that by telling my truth on national TV in front of 7 million people that I had eating disorders, or I was, sexually assaulted. I'm one of the Me Too girls, underage, over 18, doing a TED Talk. I didn't know what all this would have entailed. We were just doing a show and we really wanted people to just know what was going on in the rehab world. I didn't know what was going to relate with everyone else. So in a way, I remember my sponsor one time, I called her, I'm going to tell you a really embarrassing story. And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing The View. And then I got to go to Good Morning America. Oh my God, I think it's really going to help people. And she was like, hold up 1 second. Let's not get this twisted. It's going to help no one but you. That's how sick you are. You needed to break your anonymity on a worldly scale to be accountable. And I went, oh, that's true, right? And it was, all I could do is just keep carrying the message. But what my girls in Crenshaw, my boys in Crenshaw in 96 told me was sit down and listen and shadow your sponsor. And I did that. And I dug deep. And these people love me. And I was honest. And I told on myself. I told the truth. I started not feeling shameful about the fact that I was sexually assaulted, or that I have eating disorders, or that I wasn't no longer feeling shameful. And I had dealt with these issues. I had dealt, keyword, with the issues, that I was able to talk about it. Because if you're not dealing with this, you don't talk about it. You know what I mean? I was able.
And you mentioned there, Jen, one of the most important things of all, and we lose track of it. I know I do from time to time. It's this word truth, right? And it's this deep level of honesty. I read a couple of books in the past few years. One of them was We Are the Luckiest, Laura McGowan, and the other one was Untamed by Glennon Doyle. And it absolutely, both of these books hit me for that part they had about honesty, how well they wrote about how difficult it was to become more honest at deeper and deeper levels, and how my wanting to be honest is just the beginning. And there's a real uphill slog for me as I'm going to encounter different resistances within me, to be honest. Congratulations to your sponsor for recognizing that. You needed that nudge to understand you're not helping other people, you're helping you.
Mm-hmm.
And, I tell people on a regular basis, done a lot of work with parenting, and I tell people, however much your kids learn this much from you, or they learn this much from you, however much they learn from you, a minimum of 80% of it is going to come by watching how you live your life. And that makes really good sense for parents sometimes, but it's also true for everyone around me. People don't learn from me by the lectures I give them. They watch how I live my life.
Yep. Yeah.
And if I'm modeling something that works and they say, how are you getting those results? I just say, this is how I'm living my life. And they say, oh, I'll try that. Then it's up to them to apply that in their lives and make a difference.
Absolutely.
I love that. It's true.
The hardest thing, it's hard for people to be honest. And, it's easy for people, but the thing is, how many people have sold themselves short because they're not willing to take that little extra bit of help or work or knowledge to benefit them and better themselves. Getting sober was easy. Doing the work was easy if you actually do it. Taking a look at myself was hard because I was a liar, cheat, and a thief, and how to communicate without yelling or using immature things. And it's all growth. And I'm still working on growing and being a better person today. You are. That's what we're all doing. A lot of people don't do it. They kind of cool where they're at and they just want to go. And those are the difficult cases and the difficult ones. But if it was all easy, everybody would be doing it.
Well, so if we look at the time and we realize that we're up against it a little bit here, if you just take a breath and clear your heads and think, for each of you, what's a kind of a closing comment or maybe some aspect of your work that we haven't touched on yet, or one that we've mentioned that you want to go back and highlight?
I don't think it's about my work. I think it's about reaching someone else. And I hope somebody can hear this right now. I didn't know how the next 5 minutes were going to be. I really didn't. I had no understanding. At times, I'm a little overwhelmed with the next 30 minutes, right? And I just have to believe that you believe, because that's what the old timers used to tell me. So to anyone struggling right now, just believe that I believe. And, I encourage you to try to get to know the person you're trying to kill before you kill him or her, because you might realize that you matter and that you are so loved and that your story is not done. And it's up to you how you want to tell your story. And that really, if you work for it, you become whoever you want. And I can honestly tell you, sitting here next to my husband, because I've said this before, that we love you and we expect nothing in return from you, except knowing that you're trudging with us. That leads us with so much peace. So please don't give up on yourself.
Yeah. The way I look at it is the hardest thing for anyone to do is this. I need some help. I'm struggling, whether it's financially, spiritually, emotionally, mental health, addiction, it doesn't matter. The hardest thing to do is tell on yourself. If you got a heartbeat, you got hope. Put up your hand and ask for help. And, whether it's through a YouTube video, through a Journey's Dream event, one of the neatest things I did was with Journey's Dream and Mark and them down at Soldiers Field. And I got to be a keynote speaker with Elvis Presley's half brother and the founder of a Make-A-Wish Foundation, who unfortunately has passed away. I got a beautiful life today, and it's just carrying a message of hope out there. And if you need help, call us. If you want to talk, give me a call. I pick up my phone all the time, 844-611-HOPE, 844-611-4673. It rings to my cell phone. It's as simple as that. And that was my wife's chapstick that I knocked on the floor.
Well, I thank you both so much for being willing to share and give your time to us today, help with this project. And it's dopetohope.com.
Yes, sir.
And I look forward to following the story, how this new project blossoms. And whatever new projects you get into, I'll be following along. So thank you so much. It's a blessing to know you.
Thank you so much. We can't wait to tell you in the future of some of the projects that will be coming up.
Yeah, we got some neat things in the works. Tim, we want to thank you and everything you do, and we'll be in touch, my brother.
Thank you. Tim, famously known as A&E's dope man and substance abuse interventionist, And Jennifer, world-renowned actress, model, substance abuse counselor, and reality TV star, are not your typical celebrity Hollywood couple. Not only are they famous and in active recovery, they are both proactive in changing lives, sometimes even helping to save them. Tim and Jen speak to audiences all over the world whenever possible. They travel and work together during public speaking engagements. They inspire their audiences to live a more fulfilling, passionate, and purposeful life. You can find out more about them at dopetohope.com, dopetohope.com.
You've been listening to the On Your Mind podcast, offered by Journey's Dream, where we support people through mental health challenges to a place of true and lasting well-being. If you love our show, we invite you to visit onyourmindpodcast.org to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our helpful resources. Thank you for listening.